What was life like for you growing up?
So, my mom worked in a law firm and had a psychology background, and my dad was an accountant. He was an auditor. So we had one person who was very much a people person and the psychology of people, and we had one person who was a bean counter. So numbers always mattered. So I think I was pretty blessed having a very mixed family. One was a Republican, one was a social Democrat. So when you talk about having a balanced family, one came from immigrants, one came from a very wealthy background that were property owners and business owners. So when I say I had a diverse background, I really did have a diverse background, which I think is truly a blessing because I think I look at people for who they are and not maybe what they are, or where they came from, or what stereotype somebody put a box around them. So I think I was pretty blessed in that realm.
Yeah, no, that's wild. Typically you don't see that
Not
diversification.
anymore.
And I got to ask because obviously, when we're recording this, it's March. I'm sure your taxes are on point, right?
Mm, yes, right. Yeah, we were laughing about that the other day, trying to make sure we didn't miss any deductions because you always go through that one last time when you see that number and go, God, I wish it was just a little better, right?
I literally I just did that because we're in the process of buying two houses right now and doing the taxes and figuring out what's that number that we need to be at to be able to get both, but not really have to pay a ton. It's a fine line that we walk.
Right.
Did you have any interests or hobbies growing up?
So it's kind of funny. I had cheered in high school and I cheered in college and did the fun sorority thing. And I was actually a pre med student. That's what my undergrad was in. And but I started working in a real estate firm when I was in high school. And my father, being that I had a double major in economics and insurance, and a minor in I think statistics and something else, kept pushing me to do more business classes, which I didn't do as an undergrad. So I ultimately, later on in life, I think kind of just to satisfy my own mind and probably satisfy my push from my father, ended up getting my MBA. So if I could have truly a hobby, it would probably be going to class and studying and learning something new. So with that, I mean, it kind of follows through with my personality. So every morning, and I try every night, but I'm not so good at night. I read a few pages in some book that I'm taking on. And then I have an app called Blinkist. So I listen to at least a book a morning. And sometimes, because we multitask, we all are probably multitaskers. And if they probably tested most of us, we test ADHD. But I literally sometimes will listen to the same book a couple mornings to make sure that I didn't miss some good aspect of it. And if the book's really great, then I'll go buy it and I'll actually read the book, cover to cover. So I think that learning habit of mine is probably truly, truly there. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I do like to travel. So we traveled when I lived at home, and now I travel as an adult and take my daughter places.
I have to unpack because you just went through a lot of school and all of those things, and we'll get to the real estate portion because I'm curious of what led you obviously to that path, and we'll get there. But going to college, you said pre-med, right? With
Yes.
you had a double major and a minor.
No, my dad did, and so he
Oh,
wanted me to
okay.
take more business. He wanted me to take more business classes, and I was really focused on the sciences. So I was always in labs, and I still read science magazines all the time as a hobby, if you want to call it that. So when people get sick and they end up in the hospital, they call me, and I now end up showing up, and I see more like a hospital administrator because I have enough knowledge to be dangerous, but I do tend to usually get people better service because I ask enough questions that I intimidate, I think, the staff.
What interested you in the sciences and to go pre-med?
Well, I think I grew up with that as a goal because it fascinated me. And I think knowing that I was probably one of the few kids on our campus that took cytogenetics in a long span of period. There were three of us that took it the year I had taken it, and I think the previous 2 years no one had signed up for it. So I really am like a science geek, and I really thought I was going to go into that aspect of the world with helping people with genetics and fertile, people that are infertile and go into OBGYN work is what I really ultimately wanted to do, which is kind of funny because I only have one child. But knowing the knowing the history of everything, I think I was like one and done would be good enough for me. But I think that's really a draw that I had from the time I was a kid. I think I got a microscope when I was 5 and had a stethoscope when I was 6. So I was always the one that was checking on everyone and making sure everybody was, well and good. And I think the uniqueness about science is the more you learn, the more you discover, and there's something going on every day that can help you or help a friend or help your life or getting healthy or staying away from something or learning about something. And so, it's a hobby, it's a habit. It's a healthy thing, I think. So, like when coronavirus came, I had been reading about it. So I told all my friends about this virus and what was going on and what we needed to look for. And then when it came, some of my friends were like, oh my God, you said this was what was going to happen. And I was like, well, yeah, I've been telling you, I've been reading about this. So sometimes it helps in real life too, not just, fulfilling my itch for science stuff.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Did you end up graduating then?
I did my bachelor's. I was pre-med life science, and then later in life, as an adult, I went back and got my MBA.
Okay. What so what was the first career, getting out of school?
So my first career was actually real estate. So I ended up taking classes while I was in college to get my license. I had met a very young realtor and I got engaged to him my senior year in college. And then I graduated and promptly told my parents I wasn't going to med school, I was going into real estate. And they were kind of taken back. And my father said, so I just bought you this expensive degree from a private institution and you're not going to use any of it now and didn't take the business classes I paid you to take. But it all works out in the end. So my first real job was as a realtor.
That's wild. And you've been doing it ever
Yes,
since.
ever since.
Now,
37 years later.
I know you mentioned that, briefly in high school that you had an internship or you worked for a real estate
I did.
company.
I did.
Was that and I know there's some history in the family you mentioned of like rentals and
Law
owning
firms
some
and things. Yep,
property.
yep, yep.
What is that what was that the itch? Did you have interest in it before you
No,
even went to real
no,
estate?
no. Actually, a friend's mother was a realtor, and his sister had worked at this real estate firm as a receptionist and said, hey, my sister's graduating from college. My mom thinks this would be a great weekend job for you. And so I failed to call the woman and they hired somebody and I guess they fired the girl like a few weeks later. And the woman called me, the manager of the office called me and said, I got your number from so-and-so and we'd like to interview you for a job. And my parents really didn't want me to have a job, to be really honest. I'm an only child and my dad was probably, pretty protective. And so he really did not want me to work. And I convinced my parents to drive me to this interview. So I'm 15 years old. I go for this interview. They think I probably won't get the job. I get the job. And so then, because, I was probably a quick study, I started learning more and more. And then I kept that job all during high school and college. And then every break I had, if I wasn't going somewhere, I I always had a job there. So every break when I wasn't on vacation, they had stuff for me to do. My boss taught me her job. So then, I filled in as the administrative manager at one of the offices when I was in college and got all the books up to date, did all the end of the year numbers, and they're like, how did you know how to do this? I'm like, well, I learned this through the years. So it was kind of, I had the background of the real estate office going on. So I kind of fell into it. So then when I decided to become a realtor, I knew the backside of the real estate office. And then, it was just kind of learning the sales part of it.